Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 354 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. Check them out at PerformBetter.com. I'm your host, Anthony Renna. The show notes are located at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. On the StrengthCoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner, spoke with Coach Boyle about the upcoming Spring Seminar, April 1st and 2nd at MBSC in Boston. We spoke about his box squat post from Instagram, and would it be okay to use the box with goblet squats? And we also spoke about sprinting with an implement, another Instagram post that he was talking about. Some of his athletes got better times with an implement in their hand, so he's going to really try to experiment with that. Guys, don't forget, I did a special interview with Coach Boyle called 40 Mistakes, 40 Years. It's actually the same topic he's going to be doing at the Spring Seminar. You can check it all out at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. For the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, brought to you by Athletic Greens. Guys, don't forget you can get a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/strengthcoach. Today I have on Pete Houlihan. He's the co-founder of Win Performance in Chicago, and he's a defensive back specialist. So I wanted to do something different for this interview and really dive deep into a position-specific training and skill work and how the two work together. Pete is a former DB from Eastern Illinois, and now he specializes in training them, among other athletes, but really wanted to dive deep into this. So I asked him about a really kind of overview of what the positions that are considered defensive backs are, what is the skill set for each one, and the physical demands of each. What does a week look like in the off season? What is his philosophy on speed as well as agility work? And the importance for strength for performance, that and so much more. Good stuff coming up from Coach Houlihan in a little bit. For the Naamly Maximizing the Member Experience with Sumit Seth. Sumi's the founder of Naamly. At Naamly, they help you build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com. You can schedule a demo and get a feel for what it's all about. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on your free 30-day trial. Today, Sumi's going to go over offboarding. So last week he was talking about onboarding, and offboarding is really embracing the reality that customers are going to leave, but we can leave them with a positive taste in their mouth. And he's going to go through some steps on how to get through this transition. I just think it's you don't hear a lot of people talking about this. I think he did a great job with it. Perform Better right now, online sale, 50% off a bunch of stuff, including bumper plates, kettlebells, and dumbbells. The one-day seminars continue. Boston, March 18th, and Chicago, April 22nd. Also, the summit dates and all the information presenters for Orlando, Chicago, Long Beach, and Providence this year. Finally added back Long Beach. I will actually be speaking there, so I'm really looking forward to that. Guys, you can check it all out at PerformBetter.com. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now time for the StrengthCoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. It's actually, we're gonna call it today too. We're also the Spring Seminar at MBSC. That's the sponsor. It's April 1st and April 2nd. Back and better than ever. Used to be in February, and that great Boston weather probably didn't help. So they moved it out a little bit, maybe some schedules, but good lineup this year. Coach Boyle, obviously, Jordan Syatt, Pat Van Gallen, Scott Livingston, and then the boys from MBSC, Kevin Carr, Dan McGinley, Vinny Toludo, and Eric Daddario. Coach, how you doing?
I am doing well, Anthony. How are you?
You're doing great. Looks like you got a nice lineup. You got 2 days of, I don't know how that Saturday seminar, 7:30 morning workout. Come on Sunday. Looking forward to that, huh? That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I think it's always good. The good thing about it for us is that we don't do it to be a moneymaker. We don't, if we break even on it, it's great. It really is just an opportunity to kind of get people together, to let a lot of our MBSC, CFSC crowd get together, talk, work out, have a couple of beers on Saturday night. I think the whole process is a great community building opportunity. So I like it. I look forward to it. Last year, I think for the first time, I sat and I think I listened to almost every single lecture. I listened to all of the guys. I listened to Vinny and Steve and Dan and Kevin and um, Les Spellman, I think, spoke, and Nicole spoke last year. So
Yeah.
it was a really good event, and it's going to be a really good event this year. It's
Yeah. I think it was.
everybody's a good speaker. It's going to be really enjoyable.
Let's be honest. Was it moved because Mark's hockey season will be over by then, and then
There was a little bit of that. There was a little bit of a late start on our part in terms of getting it, picking the date, and then we started thinking, okay, wait a second, let's maybe push this into the spring a little bit more so we can do a better job of promoting it and maybe increase the attendance a little bit. So I think there was a lot of things, and as you said, I think we've had at least 2 weather-related issues since we've been doing the seminar, where we've had snowstorms on that weekend and people have struggled to get in and struggled to get home. So I
yeah.
think pushing it out a couple weeks into the spring probably makes sense from that way too, in terms of people that are traveling up for it are going to have less difficulty. Although it's funny, we're getting all our snow now in seems like February, March is when we're getting snow. We've had none all year.
Yeah, I know.
Hopefully we won't get it first week of April.
Yeah, I will say too about the topics this year moved away slightly from the athletic stuff. Like Jordan Syatt, how to grow and engage social media audience to build a successful online coaching business. Pat Van Galen, the aging accelerants, counter to buffer. And then Kevin Carr, get moving, how to make clients, how to get clients started and make them stay. Dan McGinley, the aging adult, preventing common age related injuries. Vinny Toludo, how to coach and execute semi-private group training, and Eric Daddario, how to become a trusted resource in your clients' life. We've actually had Dan and Vinny on the same episode to talk about their topics, but it's a little bit more about general population for the most part.
We're going for that 50 after 50
There you go.
thing. We're sort of stealing your thunder a little bit here, but I mean, the reality is that's where the business is at. Truthfully, and one of the things that we've tried to do at MBSC a little bit more, it's really funny. We talked about this, but I would say 80% of our thinking was going into 30% of our business. It's kind of the 80-20 idea, in the sense that we're always thinking about the athlete program, the athlete program, the athlete program. What are you doing? How are we coaching the athletes? And then you look at them and you say, wait a second, these people are here primarily from 3 to 7, and they represent about 1/3 of our revenue. The other 2/3 of our revenue is personal training and adult small group training. And we really weren't putting enough thought into those areas. So I think for us, it is a very logical reorientation in terms of, hey, let's focus on where the business really is at, as opposed to doing, again, what do I criticize everybody else for? Well, kind of doing what they always did, right? You look at it, and I think that's one of the things, even with Chris, I can remember with Perform Better, when the Perform Better things first started, it was all coaches talking. It was guys like me and Rob Rogers and Vern and people like that. And we were talking about sports I can remember saying one time, sitting with Rob Rogers and saying, Rob, stop saying athlete, start saying client. Because when you look at that, a lot of people in the audience, the vast majority of the audience we looked at, they're personal trainers. You go to a Perform Better one day and you ask, okay, how many sport coaches and physical therapists there? And it's probably 20% of the audience. Maybe the other 80% are personal trainers. And yet, for a while, the talks were geared towards athletes and sport coaches. And it slowly, even myself as a presenter, you start to reorient yourself. Okay, wait a second. I need to talk to personal trainers. That's who's here. And I need to stop talking to sport coaches who aren't here. And I think in our MBSC seminar. Now we've just continued to evolve in that direction and say, hey, let's talk to people, let's talk to the attendees about the things that are really going to help them impact their business, where how they're going to really make money. And that's adults.
Yeah, good stuff. Coach, let's switch it over. And this kind of has relevance to the adult population versus athletic population. You did a video and you were talking about two things that you don't love. Back squats, first of all, and then times it by 10, throw on a box squat. But again, we know you're talking about back squats with the box, but what about using them for goblet squats? Because again, full disclosure, it's exactly how I use them for myself to kind of keep that vertical tibia. I feel like it was a progression from the Spanish squat, or not always wanting to, get the band on me, but having a goblet, in the goblet position, going down, and not really so much box, maybe traditional box squat, but using that as a say, okay, you're only going to go to, parallel. And I'm kind of leaning back a little bit to keep that tibia vertical. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's all good stuff.
Yeah.
We do that all the time. We theoretically, I always say we always squat to a box. We do not box squat. And I think that's the difference. That people, and that's my problem with trying to make people understand that. I have no problem with you saying, I'm going to use this box, this bench, these DC blocks, whatever it is, as a depth gauge. I want you to squat to that. And I want you to touch, and I want you to sit back, maybe make it a little more hip dominant squat. Great. Those are all good things. But when you watch, again, it's particularly Twitter, but when you watch on Twitter, and now it's the West Side type box squat, the person is sitting on the box. They are deliberately, someone else was talking about, they used to use couch cushions. They'd bring a big couch cushion in and have somebody sit, so they'd have the couch cushion to kind of absorb. I mean, there's all these things that people are doing. And my thing is that when you start getting on the box and unweighting yourself, which is what, if you read the box squat articles, that's what you're supposed to be doing. We used to do them. They called them, I still remember, the original box squat guys were the original West Side Barbell guys. West Side Barbell was in California. I always tell people that. Okay, West Side Barbell was not in Ohio. Louis Simmons took the name from a bunch of 70s guys, George Friend, Roger Estep, some great power lifters. They had West Side Barbell Club in California. And they called them rocking box squats. So you literally, and I did these, you would sit and you would literally rock back and rock forward. Some guys would encourage you, get your feet off the ground and then drive your feet into the floor. And the idea was to generate momentum. And I'm 100% convinced that my back issues to this day stem from at that time, and even the more extreme rocking box squat version. And that's why I get aggravated with people, because I look at people and say, I am not saying this from an inexperienced standpoint. I am saying this from the standpoint of somebody who was doing what the original prescription was in the 1970s as prescribed by the people who really came up with this exercise. And I don't think it's good for you. And it's amazing. But what you're realizing, and this was that was the sort of the internet this week for me, is that what is offensive? Disagreement is offensive to people. There's a group of people on the internet who post things to hear themselves talk. And then when you disagree, they get angry. And I had this conversation with a friend, and I said, you can't post something and then get angry when someone reacts to it, because you are posting to produce a reaction. That is why you posted. You posted to either get the attaboys or the slings and arrows, whatever it is. But that's the purpose of posting. Otherwise, you wouldn't be posting. Why are you posting otherwise? You're posting to generate either applause or boos or discussion or whatever it is. But that's what Twitter is, right? Twitter is, I'm going to say something, and you get three choices, right? You can either applaud me, you can boo me, or you can ask me a question. And that's pretty much what happens, is that somebody might say, hey, Ant, that was brilliant. I love that. Great job. Someone else might say, Ant, I think you're a total idiot and you were completely wrong. And someone else might say, hey, Ant, can you explain that to me? Hey, why do you do that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to go more with option 3 when I disagree, rather than just saying, "Hey, I think that's stupid." Saying things like, "Hey, can you explain? Can you put a video up? Can you explain why you do that?" And to encourage more discussion. But it's amazing how I just can't get over the people who get angry. I don't understand it because
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you doing it? If you know you're going to get angry, then you shouldn't do it.
Somebody posted that video, I think Ricky Gervais saying, "Do you really have the arrogance to believe that you're going to make a statement in public and nobody is going to disagree with you? Are you that arrogant, right? To think that."
But think about it, the way the country is, 50% of the people are going to disagree with whatever you say. It's just the
Yeah.
way that is. And I don't think strength and conditioning is any different in terms of you've got extremes. You've got people who are way on one side, way on the other. And when you try to push people in one direction or the other, they get offended.
I will say, interestingly enough, good segue into your post about sprints carrying a stick, because Instagram seems to have really, there are some great, and I'm gonna read them for you. You you time some athletes running with their lacrosse stick. It turns out they got a little bit faster. You were like, "Hey, what is this? Is this increased rotary force?" But there was some great, really great responses. Not saying, just thoughts. One guy, just my thoughts, but the stick takes out paralysis by analysis factor. Okay, cool. Yes. Would that be the stick might help the forward lean, more tension in the core, less freedom to go high knees so they punch more into the ground. All right, who knows? Gripping is high up there in the neurodevelopmental sequence right after breathing. Maybe it increases neural output. I just loved the way
Yeah.
that discussion came.
Yep. That discussion was extremely positive until it got into the David Weck stuff. And then I don't know if you saw some of his, but of course it was he started what he did is he took mine and reposted it without tagging me, saying that Mike Boyle has finally come around to the Weck method, basically, that Mike Boyle is now teaching coiling and nose over toes or something, whatever he called it.
Yeah.
And I was amazed but I knew when I did it, I said, this is going to bring the Weckies are going to come out of the woodwork here and say, oh yeah, look, coiling, rotation, you're faster. And I'm like, the fact of the matter is there's probably something to that. I do believe that giving the person that object in their hand is doing something from a rotary power standpoint that might be beneficial. The difference is minimally beneficial when you look at the times. They weren't big changes, but I would have thought, and we did it with Charlotte North, who's the best women's lacrosse player in the world. And my feeling was she's got to be slower running with the stick. And she was the first one, and she was like literally like waving the stick over.
I heard her. She made, yeah. She screamed.
And I kind of was like, wow, that's weird. And that's why then we grabbed Cliff, because Cliff's a really good sprinter who also played lacrosse, played football at BC as a grad student, but played lacrosse for 4 years at UMass Lowell as an undergrad. And he's really fast, and he ran faster. And then I thought, I guess the difference is you can't be afraid to do something that might show that you're wrong. And that's what I was looking at in this particular post is that, hey, if you'd asked me what I thought before, I would have said the stick will clearly slow them down. Right. I
Yeah.
would have, again, if we'd been at Vegas and you said, hey, okay, Mike, black or red, what are you going to bet on? I bet, okay, I'm betting all the money's on the stick is going to slow them down. They'll be slightly slower with the stick. Wrong. But that's okay. It's all right to be wrong. You learn when you're wrong, and then you start again. As you said, you get some people kind of postulating, okay, maybe you were wrong because of this. Maybe you're wrong because that. Someone else said, maybe you were wrong because the stick went through the timing gate first.
Yeah. I saw Tim Lavoisier said that. Yeah.
And I was like, that's also a possibility that I hadn't thought about. But in any case, it's sort of like you're saying to yourself, oh, I don't want to do a research study that might disprove my theory. It's like, no, you want to do a research study that might disprove your theory, because that's how we get better.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'd still be doing side bends and Russian twists. And, there's a lot of core stuff that we'd still be doing that we don't do anymore. because guys like Stuart McGill went out and did research and said, hey, wait a second, I don't think that's necessarily the best exercise. We want that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We need that kind of stuff. That's why even if you look at, it's funny, all of the research on unilateral versus bilateral training, the worst outcomes have been that they're equal. That's the worst outcome that you see.
Yep.
But a lot of the outcomes have been, generally speaking, for things like change of direction or speed, that unilateral is proven superior. But it's amazing that people will still insist on doing bilateral stuff, even though looking at it saying, wait a second, and this is what I always go back to, I can have you squat with half the weight, which means half the spinal stress. And people will say stuff like, you need the spinal stress. The more weight you put on the spine, the better it is. And it's kind of like, I don't think so. I'm not sure. I mean, I think up to a point in the beginning, like you said, I want to get my adult clients goblet squatting. I want to get some loading on their spine. But there may come a point where that becomes diminishing return, where suddenly now when 100 pounds was good, maybe 500 isn't 5 times as good. And maybe 500 pounds isn't good at all. And that's the part that I guess stresses or disturbs me when you look at people. They're more attached to the belief than they are to being right or wrong.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up David Weck. I think he's an interesting character for sure. For years, I forget the guy's name that was on, told me about him years ago, like, you should get him on. And I always researched him, and I find him to be really interesting and intriguing, but I don't really understand what he's talking about a lot of times. So for me, I'm worried about interviewing somebody like that because I have no clue. When I've tried to listen to his stuff, there was a moment when he was ranting on Instagram and everything about the, strength and conditioning cabal. But to his credit, he kind of apologized to everybody, and his stuff now is a little bit different. But I would like to get him on sometime if I can really research what some of the stuff he's talking about, because I just don't get it. And I think it's hard. It's really hard to kind of, especially in this environment, with maybe, a practical piece would help. But there's some interesting stuff there. I just don't know
I
how
think my problem is that he's constantly posting about me and about Stuart McGill, but without tagging us. But we're constantly in there. We're the old guard. We're the people. And it goes back. We've had this conversation. It's the whole idea of because you do anti-rotation exercises does not mean you are against rotation. And this is where to me,
Yeah.
I get aggravated because I say, go back and read. Like, people, they'll post something and say, you say the spine should remain stable. And I'm like, yes, I said that in an hour lecture where we discussed the spine. I did that, that's not the sum total. I do not believe that we should be training to be a statue. And I've never said that, but that's my big objection is that he pulls things out, like he pulls a sentence out of something and then makes that sentence into the issue without looking and saying, wait a second, let's listen to the hour context that came with that sentence. And then tell me if you still feel the way that you feel. And as I said, it's almost a constant kind of banging of the gong that, Mike Boyle and Gill are trying to turn all of these athletes into statues who don't move their spines. And it's like, no, that's not what we're doing at all.
Personally, I've never heard you or McGill talk about sprinting with this braced core. I don't know where that ever came from. The only thing I've ever heard McGill talk about is when you are doing anything, there is a brace and a release. Contract, relax. He said the best are always contracting and relaxing at the right time, sequencing. So that's really, for me, that's what I got
Double
out of
pulse.
it.
Yeah. And I always said that, I used to look at Olympic lifting. Olympic lifting's double pulse.
Mm-hmm.
Be explosive and then be eccentric. I mean, that's what you're doing, right? It's like boom, boom. It's that off. And yeah, so I guess that's my biggest beef is sort of that people are being, I think, intentionally misled about what we're saying.
Yep.
And I've gone through that so many times with the anti-rotation thing, is that we're not saying that you're not going to rotate. What we're saying is that you need to have the ability to control rotation. That's what anti-rotation is, control of rotation. It's not literally don't rotate.
Yeah.
And
Coach, okay.
you tell people just they haven't listened. And that's
Yeah.
what aggravates me. It's like, listen, read a whole core chapter, listen to a whole lecture, buy my core training. And not that I'm trying to pitch the core training product, but buy the core training product and listen to the 4-hour lecture and then see what we're doing from an exercise standpoint. And you're probably going to walk away thinking, yeah, that makes sense. I agree.
Yeah, or I'm still going to keep my stuff, but I got to play with some of Mike's ideas. I'm coming, like you said, I'm trying to get people to think. And I think you're right. If they saw some of these things in the full context, they would understand a little bit more. And obviously we can't always do that, but I mean, giving them plenty of opportunity with MBSC.TV, StrengthCoach.com, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, there's plenty
It's all
there.
out there.
It's all out there. Coach, really quick, are you thinking of now, maybe when Mark's lacrosse team comes in, get them back in there. Let's run them again. Let's see what they look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
I'm
a bigger
100%
sample size.
Once we have hockey players. So what happened last year is that Mark finished off his ACL in a lacrosse captain's practice at the end of hockey season when they were in playoffs and was subpar in the playoffs. And we have another tackman who's going to UMass who's really good. His back was bothering him, I think, from messing around at lacrosse captain's practice, and he wasn't great at the end of hockey season. So our hockey coach has been very adamant about us being very relaxed about lacrosse until we get through playoffs. So yes, I'm definitely, because I have just a stick, and you only need it doesn't have to be their stick. It's just any stick.
Yeah.
I want to try it. I'd like to take a bigger sample and see does it, because again, if it means that stick is in fact some sort of rotational force multiplier, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be interesting. I'm really interested in seeing. Are you going to be the dad? And these, I know Reading has the playoffs coming up. Are you going to be the guy if they're losing? You're going to be screaming at the coach. I told you we should have had them in here for working out. And the crazy parent.
I'm not. The crazy parent is only in my head.
Okay.
Although he says all those things, but it's all like subliminal, man. So none of it comes out.
Okay. Even with Michaela when she was a kid, like your oldest child.
Sometimes I had a few outbursts when she was a kid. I had a couple.
Okay.
Especially because sometimes at the girls' game, you're one of the few people that are there. There was one time she got hit, and I screamed at the referee, and she legitimately repeated exactly what I said at the game. She goes, "I can't believe that you said," and I was like, "I know, I can't believe I yelled it either."
Wow.
But it was one of those like someone physically tried to hurt her. And I literally screamed at this guy, but because there were maybe 20 of us watching the game, it was like I was yelling right to him. There was no.
Oh,
so
man.
yeah, that's why I said everybody will become a parent at the worst time and revert the type of behavior that you say you never want to participate in. You will at some point again, but I promise you that you will not be able to restrain yourself for an entire career as a youth sport parent. But Mark, you say the same thing. He'd say, "Dad, don't yell from the sidelines. I can hear you and I know it's you." Because sometimes you're not really yelling at them as much as you're cheering and like, you're almost verbalizing what you're thinking should be happening in the game, but sometimes you're doing it at a level that actually is audible and the kids can hear you.
My mother was like crazy, the loudest one, but it was all positive, and she didn't know what the hell she was even, get the puck and, whatever. That's all. It would be like the same stuff, but you heard her out there. I'm like, Jesus. Anyway, but it was all good stuff, so I can't blame. Now, my father, on the other hand, that's another episode. All right, Coach. Thanks for doing this. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks, Ian. I'll see you.
Welcome to Naamly's Maximizing the Member Experience segment. My name is Sumit Seth, and I'm the co-founder of Naamly. This week, I had 2 of my former clients reach out to sign back up. The joy of reconnecting with a former client absolutely made my day. It gives us another opportunity to fulfill the promise we made. Being naturally curious, I asked both owners what inspired them to come back, and they both shared they had fond memories of how we treated them throughout their tenure, from the time we signed them up to the time they decided to leave. We kept in touch with them throughout this period through a combination of educational emails, product updates, and the occasional personal outreach via email, text, and phone. While all of us want to avoid customer churn like it's the plague, we also need to embrace the reality that it's inevitable despite our best efforts and intentions. The offboarding process, very much like onboarding, should leave your clients with a positive taste in their mouth and a warm, fuzzy feeling in their hearts. After all, even if we don't do business together, we built a relationship with them, and at the very least, we should part as friends. As a first step to creating this onboarding process, set up a call or an in-person meeting to get a crystal clear understanding of why the client is leaving. And remember to not make it all about you. It's also important to put your plan in action as soon as the client expresses their desire to cancel. Typically speaking, cancellation reasons fall into two buckets: reasons in your control, such as cleanliness of the gym, being bored, not getting results, or even not really coming to the gym. Two, reasons outside of your control, such as someone losing their job or moving out of your serviceable area. It's important we make that distinction. Reasons in our control leave us with an opportunity to fix the problem. Maybe we need to adjust their membership tier or find an alternative solution, such as a specialized program they can do. At this point, should the clients be committed to leaving, ask them for feedback on what you could have done differently, doing your best to understand things from their perspective. Inquire about their experience with you, your team, your processes, and even their perception of value. Some areas to dig into could be their usage, the coaches, the onboarding process you implemented, and the personalized accountability you had put in place. Next, you need to explain to them what they can expect and a detailed breakdown of next steps and associated timelines. The key here is to focus on the human element, and it's absolutely okay to treat clients differently, as not everyone is sane, nor are their circumstances. I would even venture out to say that you should give your clients a parting gift depending on their reason to leave and where they're headed. Maybe it's a stretch routine, a nutrition guide, maybe their progress reports and measurement history if you keep that. Something that is personal and helps them to be successful in whatever they're venturing out to do. Think long term, for we are all in the relationship game, and this move will create a lasting impression in their mind about how you genuinely care about them. Once done, set these people into your newsletter and also make a note to check in with them personally through a text or a call or their birthdays or anniversaries or other important dates that you got to know about them. Leverage technology to stay in touch with them, but make sure you make it conversational. And the event you do end up introducing that program or starting that 2 p.m. class that they wanted, basically fixing that issue that they had voiced in the feedback session that you had with them, circle back with them and update them about the same. All these little things compounded over time will help you spread your sunshine. Keep the doors open for them to come back, give you referrals even if they no longer work with you, and in the long run will set you up for massive success. I had read that life is like a conveyor belt, and what you put on it comes back to you. I believe it comes back to you tenfold. That's it for now. I hope you take the time to document your offboarding process so you can leave your clients with that warm, fuzzy feeling in their hearts, and they become your brand ambassador even when they're not associated with you. Till next time, this is Sumit Seth, co-founder of Naamly. For more info, please check out naamly.com. You can schedule a free demo to discover how we can help in creating personalized, consistent member experiences so your clients stay longer and pay longer. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on a true free 30-day trial.
All right, now it's time for the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, brought to you by Athletic Greens, 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. I use it every day. For me, it fills in the gaps in my nutrition. I've really kind of been using it lately as a pre-workout. A lot of times I'll use it as a post-drinking night supplement in the morning, get me going. So Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/strengthcoach. All right, today I got on Pete Houlihan. Pete is the co-founder of Win Performance in Chicago, former Eastern Illinois football player, defensive back, and why that's important you'll know in a couple minutes. But he has an exercise science degree as well. So he's a sports performance coach. He's worked with Major League Baseball players, and he's a defensive back skill coach. He's been training over 50 professional athletes over the last 5 years. Pete, thanks for doing this, Coach.
Absolutely, man. Great to be on. I've listened to this podcast for years now, so it's an honor, man.
All right, awesome. Well, so I always kind of love, people know, I love that when somebody who played something kind of goes into that sport, right? And I think there is an advantage to that as well, because knowing the position, knowing the sport, kind of gives you like almost instant credibility. You played it in Eastern Illinois. You have an exercise science degree. So talk to me just really quick about, were you coaching first, or was it right into strength and conditioning after college, and what led you to strength and conditioning?
Right. So when I was in high school, I was kind of I was a little undersized. So obviously I had to find things in my game to kind of help me get to the next level. So I kind of at a young age, as like a sophomore, junior in high school, I was like fascinated by finding out ways how to get me faster, how to get me stronger, or how to find an edge. So I always knew that in my heart that was something I wanted to do. I always loved the football side of it too. And I love football, obviously. So I thought about getting into maybe collegiate coaching, or maybe trying to coach the NFL one day. But for me, I loved being in the weight room. I loved training. So that's kind of where it brought me. And playing at Eastern Illinois, I had a really good strength coach. He, Coach Sean Edinger, he's actually the head strength coach at Syracuse now, but he's been a mentor to me. So I basically lived in the weight room, and so it was something I kind of always wanted to do. I think being a player helps, because I think athletes, they understand that where you're coming from is not, when I'm maybe getting on somebody or being hard on somebody, they don't look at it as I'm just getting on them. They kind of see it as, okay, he's been there. He wouldn't ask me to do anything that he hasn't done in the past. So I think being a player in that background and just being able to have kids relate to you, or I think it helps when it comes to having kids perform.
Pete, what is your size? Just so, because we're going to get into this DB specific work. We're going to talk all about it. But so what is your size, and are you the average size for a defensive back or a cornerback or safety?
So when I was playing, I was 5'9", 175 to 180 pounds. That is really undersized. The average DB, the average corner, let's just break it in the corner in the NFL right now, is 6 foot to 6'1.5". They want guys with really long arms, 6'3" to 6'6" wingspan. Safety, you might be able to get away with being a little bit shorter, but the average size in the NFL for guys are 6 foot. 185 to 200 pounds. So I was definitely undersized.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive deeper into this. And everybody knows I'm a hockey guy, but I looked into defensive backs. And so we do have a lot of international listeners. So I do want to kind of go over, look, there's a lot of times either 3 or 4 defensive backs on the field at all times, right? Now, they're often the fastest players on the field. They need to cover the wide receivers on offense, who are obviously the fastest guys for the most part on offense. Now, this is broken down, basically cornerbacks and safeties, and there's either a free safety or a strong safety. You said there might be one more kind of player. So I want you to go over, what is the skill set and the physical demands of each of these positions?
Okay, cool. We'll start with corners. So corners are the 2 guys on the outside. These are the guys that are going to be your most athletic guys on the field, because they have to play man-to-man coverage. If you want to have a successful defense, you have to be able to play man-to-man. So your corners need to be very quick. Their footwork has to be insane. They have to have super fluid hips and they have to be fast. Now at the safety position, your free safety is kind of going to be a hybrid of a corner and strong safety, whereas you want them to be fast, but they still have to be able to come down and play in the box, make tackles, get their fits in a run game, and be able to play in the middle of the field and be able to play man-on-man on tight ends. Strong safety, depending on what defense you're in, is going to be a little bit bigger. Now the NFL and even colleges, they like to recruit like oversized or not undersized linebackers. So guys who are going to be able to come down, roll down in the box, be able to make tackles, play in a run fit, and then still be athletic enough to cover, but they don't have to do that too much. And then now in the NFL and in college football, the way the game is now, it's so much different than it was even 5-10 years ago, where everything's kind of played on the perimeter now, where, there's a lot of, they throw checkdowns, they throw bubbles, they throw a lot of screens. So you have to be able to play in space. So what they do now is they have a slot corner or a nickel back, where a lot of times guys or NFL teams or college teams, or even high school teams now, they're all adding a fifth DB who can come in, he can lock down the slot, play on the perimeter, play in the run game, and then still be able to, be involved in a run game too. So the game's getting faster. The game's getting played on the outside. So the demand for DBs in general right now is great.
Yeah. Pete, when you look at the DBs, again, you're a specialist for this. This is where we're going to talk, obviously, most of this podcast on this. Are you breaking down even more position specific within the DBs? Are you taking into account those different strong safety, free safety, cornerback, nickelback, whatever?
Yeah, we will. For the most part, I will train. A lot of the movements are similar. As we get closer to the season, we'll start breaking it up and doing a little bit more specific stuff, because the techniques are so different. Like the technique for playing press man as a corner is so much different than having to play man as a free safety or as a nickel on a tight end or on a somebody in the slot. It's like a totally different technique. So for the most part, the basic movements are the same, but as you get closer to the season, it gets a little bit more specific.
Awesome. We'll start to talk more about that in a minute, but tell me what you're a strength coach, but you're also a skill coach in the off season. What does a week look like for you from the perspective of how many days are you doing strength? Do you have linear speed days? Are you working agility? Are you doing everything every day? What does a typical week look like?
So in the beginning, first things first, I think the problem with the skill work in the industry right now is that I think people don't really understand how important the strength work is in any part of athleticism, whether it's sprinting, whether it's jumping, whether it's changing direction, whether it's injury prevention, whatever. So I think for us, especially when we get out of the season, so after you've played 17 games or you played 12 games in college or whatever, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get you healthy. So that first block of our off season, we're not even going to touch skill work. So that first maybe 3 weeks or a month, we're going to go get that base level of strength back up. We're going to make sure we correct all the injuries that we have, or maybe any nicks and bruises. And then we're going to start to get into our skill work part of it. And then in the beginning, it'll be 1 to 2 weeks or 1 to 2 days a week of skill work on top of their actual program, which would be 4 days of lifting. We're going to have a linear speed day in there. Of course, I think people don't really understand how to even train linear speed and how important actual A to B speed is in football, especially as a DB. Like there's parts of a big part of being a DB is being able to cover ground and be able to go hawk balls down or go be able to hawk guys down that are running. And I think people don't, I don't think people train technique and learning how to run. I know you had Les Spellman on. Les is the man. I've known Les for a long time. We actually worked at the same spot together before I opened Win. And my partner, Kerry Neal, he's awesome with it too. Linear speed, the technique of it, I think people don't train enough. I think people just kind of do work to do work, and there's no purpose behind it. So we'll do a linear speed day where we're just working technique. We're just working drive phase. We're learning how to hip flexion, hip extension, all that good stuff, so that when we get in the game, now we're translating it to our sport. So we'll do a max lower day, we'll do a max upper day. We'll have a rest in between, and we'll do our dynamic lower, dynamic upper. And then we'll supplement. One day will be lateral movement, change of direction, which in the beginning, the early part of that program, I will start implement their skill work in that session too, if that makes sense. So in our change of direction day, we'll start working some lateral run breaks, some just back pedal transitions, and just start drilling the basics in that. And then we'll eventually supplement an actual skill session where it's not in their session, it's post session, or it's another day of the week where we're doing position specific work. So that's kind of how it is. And then we'll always have a plyo day, an agility day. We'll do footwork. We'll do all that type of stuff within the week too. So they're kind of getting everything they need.
Okay, just to make sure we're on the same page, you have a one day you said lateral, but one day is agility. Those are different?
Yeah, well, the lateral is going to be more of a change of direction day, or it could be like we're working just lateral run, lateral acceleration, things like that, versus the agility where most of the time we're just working change of direction, or we're working first step, or we're working some reaction or something different like that.
Okay, cool. Now let's dive a little bit deeper. You said a lot of coaches don't understand this idea of linear speed, how important it is, and they're just doing the work to do the work. Tell us about what you're doing for speed, what your philosophy on speed is.
Yeah, I think so. I think it all kind of, I don't think maybe that they don't really understand the importance of it. I think they just don't understand how to train it. You know what I mean? So when it comes to just doing simple things like how to push back into the ground, we do the NFL Combine group too, Pro Day group. When those guys come in, these are the best athletes in the world, and they don't know how to do basic stuff like hip flexion, or how to punch back into the ground, or turnover, or anything like that. They just kind of run, and now we got to take those first couple of weeks to try to fix them. So I think it's important that people first off educate themselves on running, not even just the coaches. I don't even put it just on the coaches. I put it on the athletes to teach yourself or to invest in learning how to do things correctly. So when you go to do drill work, if you're in a big group, which a lot of times, you go to a speed group, there's 15, 20 kids in there. You might not get that individual coaching you need, but now you know kind of what to work on so you can apply it to what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you say fix them. Sometimes they got to you have to fix what they're doing. So what does that mean? I mean, are you doing drills? Are you doing like wall drill type things? Okay. Yeah. So
it'll be like progressions of that. And then obviously like learning how to cycle. The big thing for these guys is like just fixing. Football is very lateral. So a lot of times these guys their movements are because a lot of them are changing direction or being, and it's not a very linear sport for most guys, even receivers. You look at guys, their first couple of steps are not necessarily all linear because so that's the part of it, just fixing their basic arm mechanics or getting their hip flexor stronger, or, getting them just base level stronger in general. So now they can have some actual power behind the techniques that we're doing. But yeah, we're doing a lot of it is basic stuff like, dribbles, wall drill, acceleration drills, all basic stuff,
So tell me, how are you, for example, Coach Boyle does like a lot of the, the flying tens, et cetera, right? He gets to those. How are you doing your linear speed? Let's start there.
Yeah. So we break it up into, most of the time we'll either drill acceleration or turnover. So for those guys, it's that especially the first couple of weeks, it's going to be working on our start. So it's going to be a lot of drive phase stuff. It's going to be a lot of band work. It's going to be a lot of marches. It's going to be a lot of working on just how to extend your hip out of your start. And then obviously your starting technique, which a lot of guys had trouble with too. And then we'll break it up, and then we'll do our turnover days where we're doing our dribble drills and working on cycling and working on that top end part of it. We'll hop on the treadmill, the woodway, and start doing some stuff like that. Kind of break it up like that. And then we'll have a day where we'll go on the field and actually put everything together. But yeah, so we'll break it up like that. And then I think a big help for us, what we do too, is I do a lot of with my DBs too, is we'll do real-time corrections where we'll film it, watch it on the TV, and then get right back to it. So now you can kind of correct your mistakes in real time versus wait until after the session, watch it, and have to wait a whole nother night to do that. I think that's a big thing because a lot of athletes in general are visual learners. So that's been a big help for us.
Yeah, I saw, we had Les Spellman. He was like just watching some of his stuff. He had the tent outside. Yeah. They're going underneath the tent. They're going looking at the technology, looking at the video.
Right.
I totally agree with that. I know golf uses that a ton. They're able to because it's you get to stop, right? So
right.
It helps. Mm-hmm. So what about agility? I mean, so look, the bottom line is you guys, that position seems to have to really run backwards, run forward, run sideways, work on agility. So what are you doing for agility? Is there a philosophy there? We had Casey Wheel on last week. He was going over his system for agility, transferring onto the playing field and working with a lot of competition. Like we're always working with somebody because you're going to have to react to that person. As a DB, always will have to do that. So talk to us about your thoughts on agility work and
so obviously like agility might be the most important when it comes to being a DB because most of the things you do are so sudden and so quick, and it's based on like reaction or reading different things. So I do a lot of footwork. The footwork stuff that I do is a little bit different though, because like everything we do is with a purpose, and I'm a big believer in progressions as well too. Could be with any type of exercise or any type of drill work. So when we start with footwork, I want guys to understand what it feels like to do the drill correctly and then start to progress in a little bit more advanced forms of it. So let's say, for example, we're talking about just getting out of a back pedal, right? So the basic form is you back pedal, we're sprinting out of it, but it's not that simple, right? We want to, especially at the high level, you want to start eliminating steps. So what a lot of guys do is when they back pedal and they get out of their transitions, they use that. We have a brake foot and a drive foot. So if I'm braking to my left, my right foot's going to be my brake foot. My left foot's going to be my drive foot. So what I want to do, what I teach is I want to be able to cover ground out of my brake. So I want to be able to use my brake foot to not only stop me, but to get me going towards my target. And what a lot of guys don't do is, or what a lot of guys do instead of doing that is they use that right foot to just stop them. And now they got to put their left foot in the ground to get them to start going towards their target. And now we're wasting movement in a sport where a half an inch can be the difference between you getting your hand on the ball and not. So we'll start the basic form of that. We'll start just flat footed, and then we'll start working on foot in the ground, push, same thing, push, extend, drive. That's it. That's the base level of that. And then we'll start adding a little bit of footwork with it. We'll maybe go, we'll add a 2-foot shuffle down the ladder or mini hurdles, and then add that movement on top of it. And then now we'll add a slow back pedal, boom, feel yourself get out of it. And then now we'll add an actual back pedal in your back pedal pace that you use in a game and get out of it. So now they know, okay, first basic push. Okay, now I'm going to move my feet laterally, push. Okay, now I'm going to slow back pedal, push. Now I'm going to get in my back pedal, boom, I'm gone. You know what I mean? So that's how I like to do it. And then you start throwing the reaction time of it where, okay, now they got to get their eyes on me. They got to get their back pedal. When I pull my shoulders out, now they got to do the drill correctly and do a base off reaction off me. You know what I mean? And that's the same thing in a lot of times too, we'll back pedal, corners specifically will back pedal a little bit more in man coverage. But safeties will be a little bit faster because they're trying to keep everything in front of them. So it's a little different tempos in back pedal, but a lot of times we're doing things out of a lateral run. So I got to be able to do the same thing. I got to be able to drop my hips, push out, and not take an extra step. So you know what I mean? So we'll do certain that same thing when I do the lateral run. I'll have them walk first, step over, push out, and then we'll add a 50% run, push out, and then we'll add a sprint, push out, and then now they're going to know because they felt it. They know what it feels like to do it at the base level. So now they'll either know if I did it or if I didn't by the way it feels, or by the way we see it on tape. So that helps with me instead of just hopping in the drill and having them be like, all right, I'm going to explain this. You guys try to do it at full speed. Now we can slow it down, break it down that way. And it works. It works great for especially young guys.
Yeah. What else are you doing for reaction? Like you said, you were looking at, you just mentioned really quick about the shoulders. I kind of went by me. That got me like, okay, but what else are you doing? Because all of this really depends on how they're reading that other player. Are you teaching them as well? Like, okay, these are some cues, body language, etc. What else are you doing for reaction?
Yeah. So for corners, anytime you're playing man coverage, your indicator is going to be your man, right? So if you're playing man-to-man coverage, it sounds simple, but a lot of guys when they're playing man, they're looking back at the quarterback and they're double us. But at a base level, man-to-man, you're looking at your man. Your indicator is going to be when he drops his hips, right? So I tell guys all the time, you don't see guys that run a 4.3 and at a combine, you don't see them drop their hips. They can't run fast like that. So if you see something, you're on top and you're looking at his hips. When you see his hips drop, chances are he's getting out, right? So we'll do a simple drill where we're running. You're on top of him. Your eyes on top, meaning like you're in front of him. That's what we want to be. We want to prevent deep balls. But when you see his hips drop, I'm going to drop my hips with him. That's like the base level of it. Now for safeties, a little bit different because they're in corners sometimes, but most of the safeties, you're reading the quarterback now. So now when I say turn my shoulders, when you see a quarterback go like this, take his hand off the ball, he's throwing it. Now, man, you might get Aaron Rodgers, some other guys who will look you off and do some crazy things. But for the most part, you see this, they're going. So we'll do, and then obviously we'll do like basic competition drills where, you're on, I might have them do it from coming from different directions, but we'll do it where, you got to get to a spot and then we'll have somebody either go left or right or give you a little shake. And then obviously when it comes to press coverage, we work a lot of working your feet and staying in front because that's playing press coverage is got probably one of the hardest things in sports in general because you got the best athletes in the world who know the play, who know where it's going, and then you got to try and go stay in front of them, working backwards, and then try and stop him from the play that he already knows is coming. So,
how much and this is probably more of a player question, like when you were playing, how much are you like finding out about tendencies of that other player? Or is that really a lot of times, because, maybe in college you don't have the film, or maybe you do, on those other players specifically to be like, oh, this guy's he tends to do this or tends to do that. How much are you doing that?
If you want to be a really elite guy in football, that's something you have to learn. So that's another thing that I try to make my mission is I'm trying to eliminate that learning curve for young guys that are going to college that don't have to maybe learn how to do that. So guys they can go play earlier, they could just figure things out earlier, learn how to be a better player earlier. So I think that's one of the benefits of having a skill coach, especially the one that knows what he's doing, is that now he can help you with things like that. So I teach guys how to watch tape because it's such a big component of it. Like you even just look at down and distance. If you're a young player, listen to this. You look at down and distance when you're watching tape. That's going to tell you
what's down and distance. Sorry,
down and distance would be like the down and then how long you have to go till.
I'm sorry.
Down. Okay. So let's say third and 3 or first, and even just like short yard. It's going to tell you everything, and then you can start going off of split. So that'll be like where the receiver's lined up. Chances are he's going to run this out of this. So now you start doing, okay, it's 3rd and 3. I got this formation. Now I know it's going to be. So now you can start by process of elimination, start eliminating things. And now it's to the point where I know if you give me an outside release in this formation on this down, I know what you're running. So I'm going to jump it and make plays. Like you're going to have, as a DB, you're probably going to have 3 to 4 plays to really, really make an impact or get your hands on a ball. And by learning the actual game and tendencies and what just even the quarterback off the snap, where he's looking, things like that, you're going to be able to double your production.
Love it. Pete, and this isn't the greatest question. This is kind of me. I just want to see where, in general, there's a lot of talk about deceleration, training deceleration. It's probably a little controversial within kind of speed coaches, whether or not to train or not. Where does this fit in for you? How do you look at deceleration or training deceleration? Where does it fit in?
So I think decel, especially as a DB, is huge. I mean, you have to stop to be able to go. I mean, I feel like in anything, like just like injury prevention, like just being able to to take and apply force is such a big thing when it comes to movement in general, let alone sports. But for DBs, I mean, I always say, you have to be able to. Decel is basically a part of a lot of the progressions that I do, because you have to be able to stop yourself and put yourself in the right frame, in the right spot to be able to move in a certain way. So if you can figure out how to get there, you can probably figure out how to get out. So for me, a lot of the times, these guys just learning how to stop going sideways is such a, is a big, it just helps when it comes to teaching them how to get out of it. So I love these. So I think it's good. I think for everything, I mean, going forwards, going sideways, I think, same thing, even when you're doing plyos, when you're landing, that's basically a decel. When you're jumping and landing, you're slowing yourself. That's like basically the same thing. I think the landing is just as important as a jump. I think it should be trained for sure.
Yeah. So let's move into the strength piece for now. And what do you do specifically? Again, we're talking about DBs here today. Again, I don't normally do this,
Right.
where we're talking about one position, but I just kind of found this pretty intriguing and I wanted to kind of go over it. So when you look at this, and again, we have a couple different positions. So I asked you earlier if you would train them a little differently from the perspective of on the field, but also in the weight room. What are you looking for when you're in the weight room? How are you training these guys?
So for the most part, they're all going to train pretty similarly. We're going to get stronger. We're going to trap bar. We're going to squat. We're going to do the things we need to do. We're going to do a bunch of posterior chain work. We're going to do a lot of GHCs. We're going to do a lot of reverse hypers. We're going to do a lot of hamstrings. I think Italian football guys are very quad dominant. I think that's where you see a lot of non-contacts and stuff like that, because a lot of them don't know the importance of training hamstrings or training your low back or just training your glute. In general, a lot of times you see guys squatting or front squatting and stuff like that. And then, so I think that's a big part of it. I think at that base level of being able to have enough strength to actually accelerate or be able to jump or to be able to tackle, and then adding the dynamic part of it, being able to jump. I do a lot of single leg stuff too we'll do a lot of compound stuff for our maxes, and then a lot of single leg stuff, a lot of
like what single leg, what else, what are you doing for single leg?
Split squats, a lot of like basically a lot of stuff like that, split squats, step ups, a lot of like maybe chaos splits, just stuff where we're going to be able to get a full range of motion and then being able to like strengthen ourselves unilaterally. So a lot of stuff like that, and then a lot of hamstrings, like I said, and then we'll start adding the sled work into it. So we do like a lot of prowler sprints, a lot of again when you're doing the prowler sprints, you tie it into your speed work. So now we're working on extending our hips, punching in the ground, stuff like that. A lot of sled work, pulls, a lot of things, and then we'll, like I said, obviously we'll add a little bit more dynamic stuff into it, and then where we're doing jumps, and then we'll add the skill part of it on top of that. So
yeah. So where are you putting? How does this work? I'm going to just take a step back because with the way the week looks, and you do have all this strength work. I mean, you have all this skill work. So are you doing double sessions in the off season? Are you doing is it like the first half hour is the speed and then you're getting in the weight room? What's the sequence
for it? I'll just break down a session for you real quick. So like, let's say on a Monday, we're going to do our linear speed day, and then we're going to do our max lower. So we'll do a 15-minute warm up. We'll do our mobility in there, our prehab in there, our activation in there, and then we'll do our sequence depending on where we're at. If it's a little closer, depending on what the load is, obviously too in the lift. If it's a little bit earlier in the year, we're going a little bit heavier. It'll be a little less volume on the speed part of it. So we'll just maybe do 20 to 25 minutes of acceleration drills, and then we'll go into our lifts, and then we'll do a lift, and at the end we'll do core. And then after that, we'll do a little bit more mobility or maybe some specific stuff for corrections for some of the guys.
How long is the session?
Hour and a half to an hour 45. And then for the skill work, that first phase of it, it'll be, if it's 2 days, it'll be 2 days of a half hour, or it'll be 1 day of 45 minutes. And then at the end, we'll start. And then I like to add the conditioning in there for the guys too at the end. So when they're getting closer to camp, when they're getting closer to training camp, we'll have 2 days, maybe 3. The third day won't be very much skill. It'll be a little bit more conditioning. And then That way we can kind of knock all that stuff out in one and take a little bit out of the lifting part of it for them.
What does conditioning look like for you?
It's a lot of, so I like to do a little bit more game simulated stuff. So like, let's say for me, it'll be, you'll backpedal, we'll break, I'll point you in the direction, 10-yard sprint, line it back up, 15 seconds later, backpedal, open you up, make you go sprint down, catch a ball, line it back up. So it'll kind of replicate maybe like being in an actual play drive where, you're getting a team that's running a little bit of tempo and they'll first down, line it back up, 3 yards here. Okay. 15-yard run here. Okay. Line it back up, another 10-yard sprint. So I kind of like to do that for them. And then obviously whatever their test is, so whatever their conditioning test is going to be, we'll throw that in there too. But yeah, I like to make it, because it's hard to get into game shape for these guys. Like running 110s is great, but it's not the same as being able to do your movement and your sport to be able to do that back to back to back to back to back to back. So, and you're never going to be able to replicate it unless you do it. But that way, at least the stimulus for them is a little bit the same. So now they're figuring out, okay, I'm tired, I can backpedal. And then for any kid that's listening, if you want to be great, you got to be able to make plays in the fourth quarter. So I'm always big on, at the end of the session, we're going to make everything perfect. It has to be perfect. So it's like, I think about it like this. If, Navy SEAL, people in the military, they train from their shoulder here or their holster to here. So when they get into war, they don't have to worry about that. So for us, it's like the same thing. I'm going to worry about my foot placement. I'm going to train my eye discipline. I'm going to train my pad level. I'm going to train everything, all the little things right all the time. So when I get tired and I get into war, I don't got to worry about my feet. I don't got to worry about my eyes. I can focus on the things we talked about earlier, down and distance, formation, things like that. And then now I can just focus on making plays. I don't have to worry about where my feet are going to be or how my technique is.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it's so mental. Like I said, like you're constantly, it's such an intellectual part that you really need to have. You're reading quarterbacks, you're reading the receivers, you read the offense. Yep. It's pretty tough. And I was, last episode I talked to Coach Boyle about a James Smith quote about just really the most relevant means of improving a player's athlete's conditioning is via the actions of the sport itself. Yeah. Because it is their sport actions and not any other that cause fatigue in competition. So that's where I was going with that. But Pete, how do you manage the overuse piece of it? Like, for example, Coach Boyle talks about, he got the guys, his hockey guys, a lot of times on a bike, or he wouldn't have the coach skate them at the end of a practice, because he's like, let us take care of that. Because, let's save their groins. Let's spare the groins. Let's spare the possible injuries that can come when you are fatigued. How do you prevent that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of times that is neglected, and I think we as coaches sometimes got to maybe do a better job of looking out for what's best for the athlete, instead of just, I mean, you have to be able to see if guys are not feeling well, or just based on what they're doing. If I have a guy who, let's say, for instance, just say a basketball player, we train a lot of basketball players too. If I get a guy who's just coming off the court, who just did, an hour of skill work or maybe 2 hours of a run and hooping, I'm not gonna make him. We're not gonna do a lot of movement stuff, because he really doesn't need to do that. He needs to work on the strength part of it or the mobility part of it. So I think that's a big thing. I think it's based being able to recognize, what your athlete needs and which athlete it is. Obviously I'll train the NFL guys a lot differently than we'll train the high school kids. They are very and being open to dialogue with them and tell me how you're feeling, like what's going on with you, how's your body feeling, so that way you can kind of manage it a little bit. But yeah, I think the main thing is you don't want to overdo it, right? So you got to be able to. I think a lot of that comes with programming and how you set things up, and again on who the athlete is. But yeah, that's why I think especially early on, I think they really don't need that much of it. I think they're going to get a lot of their stuff in the actual movement part that we do during the week and their lifts. And then as we get closer, you add a little bit more, but just making sure. I think this too. I think guys athletes don't know what they don't know, right? So if you're a young athlete and you're sweating, chances are you probably think you're getting a good workout, but you have to understand the importance of how all of it ties together, how the mobility part of it ties together, how the prehab side of it ties together, how the recovery part of it, the nutrition part of it, the strength part of it, all ties together in you being an athlete. So I think the biggest mistake when it comes to skill work is guys are doing too much of it and they're not doing any lifting, or they're only doing some lifting. I think, or vice versa, where maybe they're doing just lifting and they're not doing any linear speed. They're not doing any lateral movement. They're not doing any plyos. I think you have to understand that it all works together, and it's all one big happy family when it comes to performing at your best. And especially when it comes to a position where, you have to be able to go from 0 to 100 real quick. You have to be able to run, you have to be able to quit, but you have to be strong enough to apply that force and to take that force, obviously.
Absolutely. Pete, I just thought of this because of the last Super Bowl. And how important is it for you to make sure guys are getting on the same kind of surface as they're going to play on? Because we saw, again, I'm a hockey guy, but watching, even a kicker almost break his ankle and, what's going on? I know a lot of times this year I heard a lot of talk about the turf getting blamed for ACL. So how important is that for you? Or is there anything you can do for that?
I think it's really important. I think especially at the professional level, I think, I don't think there's any, I think there should be a universal, whatever it has to be, a protocol on what type of grass it is. I know that this is these guys' livelihood. And, you see a lot of it at MetLife. MetLife's a big one where guys don't like to play. A lot of guys don't like to play in Chicago too, they say.
We say New York, man? You messing with New York?
Not New York, just MetLife. But yeah. I've heard that people don't, they say it's just, these guys are so explosive and so powerful that's something they shouldn't have to worry about, I think. And it does matter, especially if you're going from training on grass, which a lot of these guys will only train on grass during the week. So at practice, they're on their perfect grass turfs or fields, and then they go to a turf. And now that's that movement that they're normally used to doing in the grass. Now it might not have as much give. And now you're talking about, somebody's career that might not never be the same. So
are you trying to get them on those kind of surfaces?
I will. For the NFL guys, I'm putting them on the best turf I can find, which we have a lot of relationships with local high schools, and a lot of them do a really good job of keeping up with that stuff. And then grass, but I won't if it's kind of questionable turf, we do stuff on it, but we're not going to do nearly as much stress and then if somebody tells me, hey, my shins are hurting, or hey, something's going on, then we'll shut it down immediately. Because it's just. Yeah. Yeah,
I just thought of that because, after
the guys are not happy. The guys that are that we work with they're not happy with the way that some of these fields are set up. And they say that you could feel a difference.
I'm sure. This is what they do, right? Yeah. That's what you guys do. So very cool, Pete. Thanks so much. I want to remind everybody, Pete, he owns Win Performance in Chicago, so you can check him out there. And Pete, where else are you still doing a podcast?
I'm going to again. We kind of stopped a little bit when COVID was going on, but yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and then Twitter. I put a lot of content out for both training and defensive back stuff. So if you follow me there, I have a lot of good stuff on there for
because a lot of the stuff is visual, like you said. We were talking about a lot of stuff, but once you see it, it's completely different.
Yeah, it'll make a little bit more sense. Yeah.
So Pete, thanks for coming on, talking all about defensive backs. I learned a lot today, so I really appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 354 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Guys, the show notes are at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. Don't forget, you can try the new StrengthCoach.com out for 7 days for free. Go to StrengthCoach.com to check out that offer. Special thanks to Chris Parry and the folks over at Perform Better. Online sale right now, 50% off a bunch of stuff, including bumper plates, kettlebells, and dumbbells, bunch of medicine balls as well. The one-day seminars continue in Boston, March 18th, and Chicago on April 22nd. Also, the summit dates for Orlando, Chicago, Long Beach, and Providence, as well as all the presenters and their topics, including myself, I will be at Long Beach, are all set. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Pete Houlihan for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength conditioning and performance enhancement and DB training. Check out the anniversary interview I did with Coach Boyle, 40 Mistakes, 40 Years. There is a link to access that at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. Thanks to Sumit Seth and Naamly, helping build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com, use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on a free 30-day trial. Thanks to Athletic Greens. Visit athleticgreens.com/StrengthCoach to get your free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs today. That's going to do it for this episode. My name's Anthony Rena. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.